And the reason why they are so desperate to get this over the line in March is because the will of the people is changing. And let me tell you, Stephen, some of those 17.4 million were on that march today. One of the young guys who was working with me in helping to put the whole thing together was somebody who voted leave. People are entitled to change their minds. And I believe that the reason why the extremists are getting more and more desperate and why the government and the opposition need to listen to what happened today is because the will of the people is changing. And the idea that democracy was one date, June the 23rd, 2016, and then you never look at it again, and whatever mess, whatever dog's dinner the government puts up, that is what we're going to go for. That is the it that Nigel Farage is talking about. Nonsense. That's not democracy.
When Andrew Neil put it to you during the week that you surely, of all people, can't put very much stock in these marches because over a million people voted against the war in Iraq and you supported them being ignored and Tony Blair going ahead with it anyway, surely you're in trouble when you ask people to pay attention to this march today.
Listen, people can pay attention or not. If politics in the end is about what you believe, and I believe that what happened on June 23rd, 2016 is the country voted to do something that will damage this country medium and long term.
But let's get on to that. But you cannot suggest, having ignored one of the biggest decisions this country will ever make, to go to war, that people should put too much stock into how many people get onto the streets.
Well, I think it's a completely different issue, and I'll tell you why. Look, I said to Andrew Neil that I instinctively am not somebody who favours referendums. I think David Cameron made a terrible mistake. Prime ministers are meant to lead the country. They're not meant to just sort of, throw everything out to the people. We cannot undo this, in my view, without another referendum on the final deal. Issues to do with war, whether the country does something like invading Iraq, that for me is something that the people elect governments, prime ministers, parliaments to take those decisions.
How is it any different for a prime minister to have been elected to take the leadership decision on this?
Because David Cameron decided to have a referendum. And that, I think it is. Look, I would love it.
Yes, and the result. So the prime minister decided, the people voted, and you want to now ignore the authority of the...
I don't want to ignore it. I don't want to ignore it. I want to continue the democratic debate that the country is allowed to look at this and say to the politicians, is this really what we meant by Brexit?
And I want to get into all of these...
You find me a single one of your listeners who will say to you that this, what is happening now, that this is what they voted for.